This is my story of how I went from a carpenter working 65 to 70 hours a week. I always tell people I was run down, I was stressed, I was fed up and just about ready to give up. To becoming a global mindset coach, I've worked with 2,000 clients from all over the world, and I've been fortunate enough to generate over $8.8 million in profit for those clients. And on a personal level, I've been able to create time, financial, and emotional freedom for me and my family. If you're watching this, there's a good chance that you feel stuck just like I felt stuck over 10 years ago. You've probably been studying personal development for a while, reading the books and attending the seminars, but your results aren't changing, your income is stuck, and you're feeling frustrated. If that's you, I get it. That was me at the start of my personal development journey. And what I'm about to share with you today isn't just my story, it's a blueprint that's time tested and proven for you to create financial, time, and emotional freedom. Trust me when I say this, if someone like me can do it, anyone can do it. I was born and raised in Melbourne, Australia, and my sister and I were raised by a single mum. We were a typical middle-class family, I would say. But that was only because my mum was an absolute warrior. She is literally one of the strongest, hardest working people that I've ever met in my life. She worked 3 to 4 jobs to keep food on the table, to keep the lights on, and to make sure that my sister and I went through our whole childhood without going without. In terms of school, it was an absolute grind for me. I was that class clown. School labeled me earlier, I was the troublemaker, and I probably honestly deserved that tag. I was someone who never listened, I hated being told what to do, and I hated authority. A little bit of hindsight probably says that some of the things that worked against me in school have worked for me as an adult. Even though it was a little while ago, I'll give you a little glimpse into how hard high school was actually for me. When I was in year 10, I got suspended from school so many times that they told me just to stay home. And I would have gotten expelled if it wasn't for the fact that I went to a Catholic school and they weren't allowed to expel you if you were Catholic before a certain age. After grinding my way through high school, I decided to skip university or college and go straight into a trade. I actually wanted to become an electrician, but I didn't think I was smart enough to finish the schooling, so I picked becoming a carpenter. Between the ages of 18 to 20 years old, I became a domestic carpenter, and this was really dog's work. I would work outside in the freezing cold, in the rain, or the boiling heat. My bad attitude in school followed me into the real world. I had a poor work ethic and couldn't hold down a job. In 2 years, I worked for 4 different bosses. Then, just before my 21st birthday, I got a little bit of a lifeline from my cousin. He worked on the construction sites in the city, and I'd been out of work for a couple of months, and he called me and asked me if I wanted a job. Funnily enough, to get a job on these construction sites, I had to lie and pretend that I was a qualified carpenter. I hadn't even finished my schooling. This job was a blessing and a curse. At the exact same time, it was making me into the man I was, but it was also breaking me. And what I mean by that was, this is really the first time that I developed a work ethic. I really committed to the role. This is where I was working 65 to 70 hours a week. I was earning decent money, I was saving, and I was working hard for the first time. I'd been in this role for about 3.5 years, and I'd committed everything to this company. Then there was one event that was a massive emotional impact for me. I'd built my way up to being a site foreman, and the company that I'd working for, they used to have 2 foremans on every single job. The gentleman that I was actually running that job with was pretending to be my friend, was being very nice to my face, but behind my back was snaking me to my boss. Little did I know, my boss was actually taking his side, and when the job had gotten to a certain point, my boss just completely discarded me. This was a massive emotional impact for me. I'd given so much to my boss and so much to that company, and it was really the first point of my life where I realized that I had to take control of my life. I didn't want anyone else in control of my future. I didn't want anyone else in control of my finances. And ultimately, I never wanted to feel unstable again. It was so funny because for so long, I'd felt stability in that job. However, the truth was there was no stability in that job. My boss and the other foreman had all my power at that time. But the truth is, at that point in my life, it was always like me to attract something like that. I always attracted drama. I always attracted chaos. And this is the event that actually led me to personal development. I'd come home from a very tough day one day and I started researching online how to earn money online, how to earn money without working, and I come across The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. I remember watching The Secret and it completely blew my mind. And looking back in hindsight, The Secret is a little bit airy-fairy now. However, the idea, the concept that my thoughts controlled what I attracted into my life, I believed. And I didn't actually know that the personal development industry existed. I just thought it was The Secret. So I watched The Secret over 100 times before one day I got curious and I started researching the people on The Secret. Bob Proctor, Michael Beckworth, Abraham and Esther Hicks, Jack Canfield. And it introduced me to the personal development industry as I knew it. I spent the next 2 years becoming an absolute personal development addict. I read hundreds of books, attended countless seminars, webinars, 1, 2, 3 day events, you name it to do with personal development, and I read it. I was a walking, talking encyclopedia of this knowledge. However, I created no results in this time. And I was getting to a point where, truthfully, I was more and more frustrated, right? I was reading more books, I was attending more seminars, I was gaining more knowledge. However, my results weren't changing. I was earning the same income, I was attracting the same rubbish into my life. And one day I got sick and tired and I reached out to the Proctor Gallagher Institute, Bob Proctor's company. And the truth was, the reason why I did that was because I got to a point, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, but I got to the point where I was more scared of waking up in 3 years' time, 5 years, 10 years' time in the exact same spot than I was at actually taking a risk and betting on myself. And I'll go into this a little bit deeper, but that was what was missing for me, right? I was reading and memorizing this material, but I wasn't getting uncomfortable. I wasn't taking risks. I wasn't betting on myself. I wasn't going and implementing the principles. So I actually still remember the day. It was February 28th of 2015 when I first started getting mentored by Bob. And it was hands down the best decision I ever made in my life. And I made a real commitment. I made a commitment that I was going to be coachable, I was going to go all in, and I was going to get uncomfortable and actually take action on my goals. Within 3.5 to 4 months of joining Bob's coaching, my whole life changed. I was able to set clearly defined goals, start a business, replace my income, and transition out of carpentry into a life of time freedom. And that's one really big misconception. A lot of people feel like if they want to create time and financial freedom, that they have to start a business Friday, quit their job on Saturday, and that is incorrect. After I quit my job, I spent the next 9 months backpacking through Europe, a little bit of North America, and a little bit of Southeast Asia, earning money from my laptop. This was, at the time, the best year of my life. I was able to create time freedom, I was able to create financial freedom, and most importantly, I was able to create emotional freedom. I got back from my trip early 2016, and I was kind of in one of those positions where my goal from 12 months ago was no longer exciting me. I had a travel blog and I was a part of a network marketing company. I did a little bit of reflecting and I decided that I wanted to teach these principles. I wanted to coach people. I set aside my network marketing company and my blogging, and I went on helping people while trying to help people. My biggest lesson across the first half of 2016 was there's a difference in creating results, implementing these principles, and being able to successfully grow a coaching company and helping people. 2016 was a little bit of a rough year because I had no idea what I was doing. And it caused a lot of confusion because I was able to successfully implement the principles into my life while I was being coached by Bob. However, I wasn't running a very successful coaching business. And in December of 2016, I actually received an email from the Proctor Gallagher Institute saying that they had a live event in LA. So on a whim, I booked my ticket to LA, and my goal was to go to LA, share my story with Bob and his team, and partner up with Bob. I actually still remember I was very, very tight on money at the time. And the time difference between Melbourne and LA, let's say for example, if you fly out of Melbourne at 9 a.m. on a Friday, you actually land in LA at the exact same time, 9 a.m. on a Friday. And the event was from Friday to Sunday, and I flew in an hour before the event started and flew out an hour after the event finished. And the whole objective of the event was to sit down with Bob and his team, share my story, and partner up with Bob. And I must have been the biggest pest across the first 3 days of the event. I must have asked to speak to Bob and someone important from his team 150 times where people had said no. But the truth was, my back was up against the wall, I was desperate, and I wasn't leaving LA without speaking to Bob. I knew that I really wanted to be a coach. I knew that I wanted to share the principles of success and the laws of the universe, and I also knew the only way to do that successfully was to learn from the best. And the truth is, when Bob was alive, he was the best. Call it luck, call it good fortune, call it the laws of the universe, call it whatever you want, but on the Sunday morning, I was actually able to sit down with Bob's top coach and Bob and share my story. This is where I absolutely poured my heart out. And it sounds a little bit silly now, but pretty much said, I'm not leaving this meeting till we're partnered up. And Bob said yes. I didn't actually have the money to invest to partner up with Bob and become business partners with him. However, I did have an investment property. So I flew home from LA. The first thing that I did was put my property for sale, and I sold my house to partner up with Bob. I got a ton of resistance from my family and the people who were close to me. Everyone completely thought I'd lost the plot. Now, please don't misunderstand me telling this part of the story. I'm not encouraging you to sell your house. This is what I did for me to get from where I was to where I wanted to go. Because for me, the scariest thing would have been to wake up when I was 85 or 90 years old and had that little thing in the back of my mind thinking, what if I tried? This was the moment my life was really supposed to take off. And truthfully, it did. But as with everything in life, your greatest test will always come one step before your greatest achievement. And my test came in the biggest way when I was actually banned from the US. Because what happened was, I'd spent all of 2017 when I first partnered up with Bob, flying back and forth. I was still living in Melbourne, Australia, but I was constantly flying back and forth from Melbourne to the US. And we had so many different live events and training, I was literally flying back and forth every month. I'd come up with the great idea to move from Melbourne to the US and live in the US. I hired a lawyer, paid him over $20,000, and he told me that I qualified for what was called an E2 visa. Little did I know, I actually didn't qualify and he was scamming me. A couple of months into the visa process, I was on a Zoom call with him and he was telling me that my application is a home run and that if I wanted, I could actually move over to the US early. So I packed up my whole life in Melbourne, sold everything, put what I had left into a suitcase and moved over to San Diego, California. I got myself an apartment to rent, paid the first and last month's rent, my security deposit, and fully furnished the apartment. I was living in San Diego for a couple of months when my lawyer called me, told me that my application was complete, pack a backpack, fly back to Melbourne to do the visa interview. So I told all my friends in San Diego, I'll be back in a week, packed my backpack and flew back to Melbourne, Australia. The visa interview was probably the most awkward half an hour of my life. My lawyer had prepared me for a 3-hour interview. The interview went for about 15 minutes. And at the end of the interviewer asked me, why am I here? And the visa got denied on the spot. Not only did my visa get denied, in the US, if you apply for a long-term visa and it gets denied, you become a flight risk, so I was banned from the US. This absolutely crushed me. Not only did I have my whole life in the US, I'd literally spent tens of thousands of dollars on lawyers, flights, furnishing my apartment. It was a massive kick in the guts. I stopped showing up for myself. I completely tapped out. This is where having Bob's mentorship and support really come in the most. I stayed in Melbourne for about a week after my visa got denied, feeling sorry for myself, and then on a last-minute decision, flew over to Toronto to live in Toronto. I was actually very fortunate that Bob lived just outside of Toronto, so I got an opportunity to get to know him on a more of a personal level, have dinner at his house, and he really helped me through that period. I'll never forget a conversation that him and I had which had the most impact on me. He said, "Justin, nothing's good or nothing's bad, it's my thinking that makes it so." And he quoted Napoleon Hill, when Napoleon Hill said, "Every adversity, every heartache, every failure carries with it the seed of an equal or greater equivalent." Then he went on to share with me the story about 3 Feet from Gold, where he said, man or woman's greatest success often comes one step after their greatest perceived failure, the key word being perceived. He said most people experience turbulence and they quit in that turbulence where the good that they desire is on the other side. Still to this day, that is one of the greatest lessons that I've ever had in my life. I instantly adopted that mentality, picked myself up, hired a new lawyer, found a new route back to the US, and started to really look for the good in everything. Bob and I worked side by side together for 6 years, and I can honestly say it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. During that period, I was literally taken by the hand by the best teacher in the world on human potential and success, and shown exactly what to do and how to do it to coach people to achieve their personal and professional goals. During that period, I got the opportunity to coach over 2,000 clients in every industry imaginable. Bob taught me that a goal is not for what you get, it's for the person you become in the process. And everyone has different definitions of success, and the truth is my definition of success has changed as my journey has gone on. But I truly do believe that true success is being able to live life on your own terms. And Bob showed me how to do that. In 2022, unfortunately, Bob passed away, and I spent the rest of the year helping the company service their clients and transition out smoothly. By the first week of 2023, I started my own coaching company. I took every lesson that I learned from not only transforming my own life, but also the experience that I gained from coaching over 2,000 people, and I refined it into what I like to call my self-mastery formula. It's designed for people who feel stuck, whether it be financially, emotionally, or physically. My focus when I created this self-mastery formula was to give my clients everything they need without the fluff or the toxic positivity, actually showing them how to apply the laws of the universe and the principles of success. And I've been blessed to work with some of the most amazing clients all over the world. Like Shan, who's a realtor in Canada who went from $6,000 a month to $61,000 a month in the 6 months that him and I worked together. Or David, a burnt out creative director. When him and I first started working together, he felt stuck earning $10,000 a month. Within 6 months, he was able to start a side business, replace his income, and grow that side business to $20,000 a month. Or one of my favorite clients, and I know that I shouldn't have favorites, but Jonathan, who'd been stuck on $16,000 a month for over 2 years. In the 6 months that him and I worked together, he tripled his income to $45,000 a month. Now, if my story resonates with you, or you'd like to hear more about my self-mastery formula, feel free to go through all my other videos on my channel. I hope you found this video valuable, and if you did, please let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.